Welcome, routing, switching, pedal, guitar people. Well, nerds. You know we're nerds. Anyone who sits in front of a computer looking at me showing stuff is a total pedal nerd. And that's a good thing. You are a good thing. Wow, we're looking at the GEC Guitar Effects. The Guitar Effects Commander 8, because it's got 8 loops. And it's called the Live. Why? I don't know. Because it's got MIDI. Because MIDI is live. Why? I don't know. It's the GEC8, the GEC8. I call it GEC8. If you want a complete overview over its features, there's a 40-something minute video where you don't hear a sound. I talk about the thing and explain all the possible features. Now I thought about what could I show and what kind of system could I put together to show all the possible features. You can't. There's too many options. There's 1-2 amp setups, and you could even have amps with like 3 amps, but then not have one, and then have the in the FX in the loop and the Okay. So anyway, for the demo, I chose to do a ridiculously complicated but ingenious setup for you. You will probably not be able to follow me on the routing of this and the wiring of this. I studied this crap, I deal with it on a daily basis, and for me, my brain kind of got twisted. So, let's see. There's a video where you see me put this board together. It's pretty much exactly like in the video, except for one of the Moval pedals. I now have the Milos Popovic Germanium limited edition super cool blue Gainiac in that position, and I have the 2 amp setup now. So let me go over the GEC8 again. You have 5 loops, which can be behind a buffer or not buffered signal. You have a tuner out, that's pretty standard. You have 2 MIDI outs. One of the MIDI outs could be configured at the factory to be a DIN switch, which is kind of neat, but you would have to tell them what amp you have, and then they make a special wiring for you internally. But right now we have 2 MIDI outs, which is nice because there's some pedals that don't have MIDI through. Then there's, in addition to the 5 loops, the 5th of which, that's important, is a stereo loop, which is then going into 2 outputs, left and right, and you can switch between them per preset, or have both of them on. Then there's 3 separate loops, 6, 7, and 8, completely separate with their own ins and outs. If you want them all in a chain, you actually have to go loop in 6, and then 6 out, 7 in, 7 out, 8 in. You actually have to wire that up. I did that with the 2 little cables that Moen supplied to me, which are really neat, because as you can see, I use my own cables, which are on the one side a very thin panhead plug, and on the other side a straight connector, and I made them especially for pedal boards with switchers. But as you can see, they use up a lot of width on the board. So standard angled connectors like these, this is Planet Waves, or this one's a Neutrik, would be way too big and it wouldn't work. Now this is neat. See if you can see this. This is the Moen little cable that they gave me, and it's very, very thin, so it doesn't eat up a lot of space on the board, and very, very small connectors, plugs, which could actually be right next to each other in all those spots and wouldn't eat up a lot of space. Now, of course, this length doesn't work for all the pedals on this board. You would have to actually make these or order them all in the specific length that you need. As for the quality of this cable, I don't know. I really have no clue. I know that the cables I use, they're not the cheapest. I made them myself out of black silk Sommer cable, very high end, they're very thick, but they're very flexible. So I can definitely say that they're high end cables. These feel good. They're very small, very nice, very practical. I do not know about the quality. Can't tell you. I actually use this to connect loop 6 into loop 8, because here comes the wiring. Try to follow me. I got loop 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pretty standard. We got a compressor in loop 1. I actually have 2. Okay? We've got the more spark and the more yellow comp. Just to play around and see, you know, which one I like more. More. Then we've got in loop 2, because it's a good idea to put the vibe in front of everything, the Jetta vibe, and then I have an analog chorus from Joyo. Now, of course, you could put the vibe, you could put the chorus behind some. I mean, it's, you know, do you put the chorus in the loop? Where do you put it? Right now, I got it in front of everything. There's the TC Electronic Polytune Mini, which is in the tuner out. What you just heard, that's Bruno coming in, little beagle, not on the board. Then in loop number 3, I got the Plexitone from Carl Martin and the Indigo from Jetta. So that means, you know, I have one on or the other, and I can choose. You know, turn this off, this on, and now I've got the Indigo. Just because it's got 8 loops doesn't mean you only have 8 pedals. Which means in between songs you might have to kind of pick a preset by turning pedals on and off, but that's totally doable. Or have both of them on if you want total mayhem. So, that's going into loop number 4, which is the Jetta Gold Standard dual pedal or the Moval Hornet. Loop number 5, I got 3 pedals. Loop number 5 is the Germanium GEC8 using an NOS germanium transistor, and it sounds really sweet, with a switchable between a low gain and a high gain mode. Then the MP Custom Effects GEC8 Henning Edition, much rounder and the best distortion pedal I've ever used. Then we have behind those the AC Plus from Exotic. Now that is loop number 5. Loop number 5 is a stereo return, which means all my drives, vibe, and compressors could go into 2 amps. So the front end would be the same for both amps. That's how I kind of wanted it. Now the thing is, if you return the AC Plus, which is the last in the chain in loop number 5, into the left return of loop number 5, only the left output of the GEC8 Live will be available. The right output will be turned off because there's nothing in return 5, right? So pretty much there's a stereo return, and only if there's actually something plugged into that return will there be a signal on those outputs. It would be really nice to be able to bridge that return and have the complete front end, meaning loops 1 through 5, be available for both amps. You can't do this in this version. I actually was, because I don't know things, stupid enough to try to solder a cable. I soldered a cable and just made one cable into 2 mono outputs. That didn't work. You lose signal. It really doesn't. So what I did is I have a Morley tripler, which is 1 guitar in going to 3 different amps, and it's taking care of that. And so what I'm doing is the output of the AC Plus is going into the tripler, which is now under the board, believe it or not. I don't know if you can see that. Right here, I have the tripler, and I've got 2 outputs of that open, and they're going into both returns on 5. That way, I can actually switch between the left and right output, and both of them will have the same signal on it, which is all 5 loops, and I can switch between my Sir Badger or the La Boga Alligator. But I can use all my pedals that I have, except for the ones in the FX loops, on both amps if I so choose. I could even use them simultaneously if I have both outputs on at the same time. Now, of course, loop number 5 is designed as a stereo return for a delay or a reverb or something like that. For that, I have to admit that I think it's positioned kind of lame, because that loop number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is where you would have most of your drive pedals and all this. Now, if your delays and reverbs, maybe chorus, those that are actually stereo would be more placed in the FX loop. But the effects loops of amps is pretty much what 6, 7, and 8 are made for. So those are mono. So I'm thinking that the position of the stereo loop in position number 5 is placed not very flexibly. Let's put it that way. So the way I'm using it is not as a stereo effect, but I'm using it to drive 2 amps with all those pedals if I choose to. For that, I needed an extra gadget, which is a splitter. In this case, the Morley tripler. You can use, there's Lele, there's many other companies. So I have that under the board. Now then, I have my timeline in the FX loop of the La Boga. And here's the funny bit, I did it a little bit complicatedly. The timeline is loop number 7. So the FX out of the La Boga is going in loop number 7, then the loop is going to the timeline, and then out of 7 is going back into the La Boga. Pretty simple setup. And I have my El Capistan and Flint for some reverb in the Sir Badger, and that is 6 and 8. Now, I did this to show you how these can be wired. So FX out of the Sir Badger is going into loop number 6, which is then going into loop number 6 is El Capistan. Oh, here. In El Capistan, and then I used one of these little, where did I put it? Then I used one of these little doohickeys to bridge 6 to 8, 6 out, 8 in, and that's then the Flint, and then that's going back out into the FX return of the Badger. Up here we got a more Spark, very tiny flanger, which isn't in any loop. That's actually in the send return loop of the timeline, which is kind of cool because you can flange your, timeline sounds if you so choose. Okay. Then I have a TRS tip ring sleeve cable right here in trigger or switch out number 1. They're both mono, meaning you can send mono cables to your switching inputs on your amps. You could even do 2 mono to 1 TRS to 1 stereo cable. I did that on another product. Come on, the PXL, because they don't have this functionality. But here you could just use a stereo cable, and if you plug that into number 1, number 2 will be inactive, and number 1 will have 2 switching options in one cable, which is neat. So simple cable going into the foot switch input on the La Boga, which enables me to do channel switching and gain switching, because channel 2 has 2 gain stages and I can switch between those. Or 2 gain knobs, let's put it this way. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The MIDI is connected to the timeline, and I can control the timeline. So, wow. Do you actually want to hear some of this stuff? So let's see. I'm, of course, can put 8 presets here. And as you can see, I click, and the loops change. And the ins and outs change, the triggers change, all that changes. So anything I want, I can actually program into this puppy. There are 10 possible banks, but one drawback, I think, is that the bank switch will only go up. So if you want to go to bank 6, that's fine. You go up, click, 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 click. But if you then want to go back to bank 5, you don't have the way of going down. You can only go up. Of course, 6 banks of 8 would be quite a bit. And then there's the shadow presets, which gives you a lot more. So we'll get to that. That's, by the way, the shadow switch, or the emotion, however you want to call it. That is a separate switch that you can use, and I'll show you what that's good for. But the good thing is, on power up, you have a way of defining how many banks there are to begin with anyway. So I only did 2 banks of 8. So see, now it actually only scrolls through 2 banks, which is neat. What I'm not super happy with is that there is no bypass. You can't like click on a preset, then let's say click it again to put it in bypass. There is a way to do this a little bit complicatedly with the shadow preset. What I'm doing is I simply have number 1 on each bank be a bypass. Of course, you can hit the foot switch, the tuner, but then you don't hear signal. So to really bypass it and go straight to the amp, you'd have to program a patch for that. The La Boga doesn't like the gain of this guitar. Now, there is a, let's call it, I think they call it rehearsal mode. Let me see. And the rehearsal mode is pretty much for just controlling the loops on the fly. It's kind of cheating, because what it really is it's program mode. Now, anything you have done in that rehearsal mode will be left or programmed into the patch that you were on when you entered it. So it's pretty much just, you're entering programming mode. What I did is, I told myself 1 is bypass and 2 is my rehearsal mode. So anything I change on here doesn't really matter because I always use that for rehearsal mode. And I'll show you how that works. Now you hit the mute or PGM program switch right here. Let me see if I can get the camera closer. And you hold it in. So now we're in program mode, as you can see on the P. And I'm going to turn these 2 off. Right now there's no loop active and both outputs are active, meaning we should hear both amps. For you, the La Boga is completely on the left, the Sur is completely on the right, to make it easier. Now, to change the output configuration, it's very simple. It says amp on the bank switch, you push the bank switch, no amp. You push it again, you have the right. Push it again, you have the left. Oh, that was supposed to be clean. And you push it again and you got both. And you push it again, you got none. So it cycles through, none, left, right, left, both, none. So let's go left, which is the La Boga. And you want to program the switches. Now, as far as I can see, is foot switch 1 is for okay, foot switch 2 is channel. Always got to figure that out. They're latch type, by the way. Foot switch 2 is channel. Foot switch 1 is the gain. So right now we got foot switch 2 off is distorted, or channel 2, and foot switch 1 off is gain 1. So foot switch, what? Apparently not. Foot switch 1 is for channel. So foot switch 1 off is distortion, is channel 2, and then when foot switch 2 is on, we are on the high gain. Which means when both are off, we should be on the lower gain on channel 2. And both on. Well, it doesn't matter, as long as we're on the clean channel, whatever is on foot switch 2 doesn't really, enter into it. Okay, so that's for the foot switches. So right now we want to go back to clean. We want to put a compressor in front of it, which is in my loop number 1. Remember, we're in rehearsal mode, which means all the loops will, all the buttons will actually trigger the loop that it's on. Rehearsal mode, programming mode. So then on number 2, we got the vibe. Number 3 is our plexitone. Number 4 is the gold standard or the hornet. In this case, the hornet is on. Number 5, right now is nothing because none of the pedals are on. So we're going to put on the GE8. Okay, so if I put 6 and 7 on, 6 and 8 on, nothing's going to change because that's the El Capistan and the Flint in the FX loop of the Sur. So I want the timeline on, which is number 7. Nice timeline, so let's put some hornet on it. Okay, so 7 off. We'll leave the hornet on, and we're actually going to go to the other amp. So I can't do the timeline for the Sur because it's in the loop of the La Boga, but I can do the El Capistan. A little bit much. I got my expression pedal here for the El Capistan. And put on the Flint with some tremolo, which I can control with the expression pedal. And let's see what kind of cool sound we get if we put the timeline back in and the other amp. Anything I would now leave in here, let's test this. Both amps, all these effects. Would stay once I hit the program button again. So now I got nothing. So I got bi-amping. I can play both amps at the same time. I can play this one or this one. I can switch this one. I can switch MIDI. Let's test this. Let's do a simple setup with the timeline. Let's go to 5. Let's use the Indigo. Okay. Indigo, actually I only want it on 1 amp, so I want it there. And maybe I want it in front of the a little bit driven channel 2, which would be, don't tell me. So, and we're gonna go to 7, and that's my delay, which already went to some kind of setting. Yeah, kind of neat, but I don't want that. So I'm gonna go to, let's say, bank 5. Okay, that's 5, 1, meaning each bank on the timeline has 2 presets, which means 5 times 2 is 10, and the first one should be 11. I'm gonna go with 11 because there's a bank 0. I'm gonna go with 11. So now I gotta leave this programming mode for my preset 5 and hit bank and hold it, and now I'm in MIDI mode. Now there's 2 channels. It can only do channel 1 and 2 and send a program change for each of those 2 channels. The first program change you do will be for channel 1, the second program change you program is for channel 2. First program change will be 11. So I need a 1 and a 1. That's a little bit complicated. On the bank you have 0 through 9, and then 100 will be A. 110 will be B, 120 will be C. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, B, C, off. So we want 11, which means 1. And now I have to give it the last digit. 1 through 8 is available through the direct push buttons. 9 will be the mute button, and 0 will be this extra foot switch. It's not the easiest way to program a number, but this is how it's done. So I'm going to push 1, and now it's going to show me, 0 dot. Why? Because now I would program the program change for channel 2. But we don't want to do that. So I'm going to just push 1 and we're good. Don't want to do that. Wait. Okay, I'm going to hold this again. So where are we going now? We're going to go to Dynamo. Why Dynamo? Because I have to do actually 10. I just have to do it twice. I'm an idiot. So it's number 1 on bank 5. That would be 5 times 2 is 10. If I wanted number preset B, that would be 11. So we're going to go back in there. And we're going to do 10, which is 0. So this lights up, which means we got 1, 0. And that is the sound I wanted. You'll get the hang of it if you really want to. Now you're gonna ask, what's the deal with this doohickey, this extra switch. Now, it can do many kind of things. Most of all, it can be a preset behind the preset you have. And the way it's described in the manual is very confusing. It's like an XOR table. And let's put it this way. Right now, we programmed number 5, okay? Let's say I want to add one pedal also to preset number 5, and I want to have the option of turning it on and off. We're holding this down. Okay? And we're going to do, what was it? It was 7 on. So 7 was on, 5 was on. If I turn 7 on even though it was on, check out what happens. It turns it off. So if it was on previously and you put it on the channel preset, it will be off. So it'll cancel itself out. So we don't want that. We just want to add a vibe. Okay? The vibe's on 2. So I'm going to turn on 2. Save it. And now all I do is I add a vibe to this. Okay? That's really all it does. No, it's not all it does. Can I change? No, I cannot. I don't think I can change the outputs. I don't think I can do that. Or manipulate the switches. I don't think that is possible. Okay. What I can do is send one of 9 possible continuous controllers. Now, it's a little bit limited to have pre-selected continuous controllers that the company chose for you. They work for line 6 a little bit. They work really well for Strymon, and they work a little bit for Eventide. Now, if you want to turn, let's say, the preset on the timeline on and off, you could do that. Just hit this and then the timeline goes off. It has an on-off continuous controller, but it also can do MIDI tap tempo, which is kind of nice. You don't have to tap the timeline. You could put it in the back of your pedal, and you could. I actually do not know which one that is. I'm gonna go with 2, okay, and I confirm. And now I actually have to turn number 2 off, because every time I would push this, number 2 would come on and off. So don't program any loops into it. Let's see if this works. I did something wrong. Let's try this again. Oh, there we go. It was number 1. But those parameters you have to remember, which can be kind of tricky. So, again, we covered the triggers, but let's program another. Let's say I want the La Boga to be clean. I want to use the Sur. So, number 4 is the La Boga in distorted with more gain. I'm gonna boost it with the gold standard. I want the timeline. on 11, so I go to MIDI, channel 1, we're going to do 1, 1. That's 11. We're in dynamo, that's a tape delay. Okay, and we don't want anything here. And save. Ha. Okay, and on number 3, I want the Sur with some flint and some chorus. Nothing else. Nice clean sound. So I'm going to hit mute. I'm going to put some chorus on it and some flint. I'm going to switch to my right amp. I'm going to save this. So I'm playing the Sur Badger 18 with a chorus and some flint, and if I now switch to number 4, it'll be the Laboga distorted like crap, boosted with the gold standard and the timeline on a tape delay, which I would have to, put in. And bypassed, which is what I use 1 for. Now, with the shadow preset, again, you can put a preset behind any of these presets. So, just for fun, let's put that on the number 3 preset, which is going to the Sur. And I could, if I wanted to, put some compression in front of it, and also, let's say, the AC plus. So, I do it this way. Add compression, 7 we don't need. Add the AC plus, 5. And done. So I'm playing clean. Actually, I probably want the chorus off, huh? And that means I will turn the chorus off, which is number 2. Because it's on, and I'm turning it on again, it'll be off. Yeah, try to follow me. So that all happens within preset 3. I have options to put pedals in and out. You could also, there's a way to use the trigger outputs with the shadow preset to send a momentary trigger. You would have to use the triggers which are hidden in loops 6, 7, and 8, but it's possible to remotely tap a remotely tappable tap delay. Okay. You can see this is very complicated. Many things you can do. I think the options that you have with the GEC8 Live are mannigfaltig, as they say in German. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this switcher. It's very lightweight, it's well built. I'm thinking that it does a lot of things in a complicated way. You know, you have to patch it by itself. So if you want to connect loops 6, 7, 8, there isn't a little switch that says, well, just put them behind each other and it's linked in internally. You actually have to do that externally. So you have to route things out of it and then back into it. The MIDI programming with this is number 9 and this is number 0, just give it, you know, a display that has a couple more digits. So it does things in a semi-user unfriendly way, but if you get around that, you have a lot of options with the GEC8 Live. I love the rehearsal. Well, it's just the programming mode, but that gives me the option in the studio here to just say, okay, I want this pedal quickly, I want this pedal quickly, and not make a whole new program for it. So if you really want to know how to program it in detail, I'll probably do another video where you just learn how to actually operate it. So if you have one or you want to get one, there'll be a video for you explaining to you all the actual operating. So this is it from me. I'm gonna play some more. Probably, right, 2 sounds at the same time. Come on, 2 amps, that's cool. We're gonna do, just gonna add the other amp, and that, and some of that. There we go.